Hello, friends. It's been a while, and I'll be honest with you. The episode that I am dropping as my first episode coming back, I wrote it a while ago. I would say about a month and a half ago, but I'm just in a space where I just do not force my creativity. So the creativity that I had to write the episode did not manifest into the motivation to record. This is also a bit of a test because I'm now in a new space. And so before I would record in my walk-in closet that I would convert into my studio. And I had that nice cushion of the clothing around me and it was carpeted. And now I don't have that. So I will see how the sound is. But either way, that's not going to stop me from giving you the information and my thoughts. And today I'd like to talk about the desire for novelty. And you'll see why, but just from my observations online, I just have some thoughts and I wonder if you share my sentiments and if you know where I'm coming from. There's a topic that I've heard mentioned many times on social media, and it continues to keep my fascination. And that is the discussion around consumerism. And I think the reason why it's so fascinating to me is because I understand that consumerism is in many ways problematic, and it is in many ways the byproduct of capitalism. But I think sometimes the tone when this discussion happens blames the consumer themselves, and it paints us, especially Americans in particular, in this negative light. And it paints us to be simply frivolous and wasteful. I'm definitely of the mindset that two things can be true. Many of us can be frivolous and wasteful, but I don't think there's enough discussion around the reason why so many of us consume so much. And in my opinion, it is the desire for novelty. Whether you yourself are stuck in the routine of a mundane life, feel you had limited choices, or are drowning under the financial pressure that inflation has caused, you might find yourself desiring novelty. In a world where we know full well one cannot budget their way out of poverty, the ritual of buying a $9 latte may be seen as an act of rebellion. Because while we know buying coffee isn't what is getting in the way of home ownership or paying off student loans, there are times when we might feel a little guilty anyway. Do I deserve this? Can I afford this? Should I be doing something else entirely with my money? All while our spirits cry out for novelty. And what is novelty? So by definition, novelty is the quality of being new, original, or unusual, often triggering excitement and interest due to its unfamiliarity. Psychologically, it enhances the brain's stimulation, learning, and resilience, though its initial appeal often fades as it becomes mundane. So this is why we stand in line for a banana bread matcha latte, fight amongst others to get on a waiting list for a hoodie, voraciously consume a new TikTok series, binge watch the latest Netflix show, or suddenly consider whether or not we should cut our hair into a bob. Novelty does something for us. And you know what? We deserve to feel the excitement of newness. But today I want to talk about that chase, that feeling. And if we perhaps want to be the person whose adventure to find novelty costs us a little less, let us think about ways to still achieve that feeling without as much guilt, or rather, let's do it more mindfully. I think the first step is it needs to feel good, but we don't need to have the pressure of making that feeling last. So that being said, unless you're in a particular tax bracket, your novelty this weekend may not be a new Chanel bag. That's a bit too big of an investment. But let's go back to the coffee example. And maybe it's the millennial in me and I'm stuck on coffee or avocado toast because that's what boomers told us was standing in the way of home ownership at age 25. But if you do find joy in little drinky drinks, Maybe you start watching some TikToks or search Yelp or Google and find coffee shops in your neighborhood that you've never been to. Try different ones that have good matcha, ones that have the best pastries, and ones that have the best view. There is this gorgeous coffee shop I went to with my cousin last year. And I refuse to say the name, by the way, because it will remain my little secret. But it has an amazing view of the ocean. The pastries are divine. The coffee was good too, not too sweet. And the walk was it wasn't bad from the parking. For me, it represented slowing down. It represented intentionality because I had to plan for it. And it gave me a chance to savor, which is different who I was 10 years ago when I was simply grabbing Starbucks at a drive-thru and barely looking down or even enjoying my drink. So it was the company, the view, and the coffee itself that satisfied. How many times have we been guilty of saying we deserve something and it brings us joy, but then we don't even bother to slow down to enjoy the very thing we claim to be our source of joy? So the moral of the story here is, if you're going to do it, and whatever you do, be present with it. Do you guys remember those Folgers commercials from like the 90s? Maybe they were onto something with the dramatics of savoring the morning coffee. You never know. The next part I want to touch on is that sometimes our chase for novelty is also a desire to belong. I've seen so many celebrities and popular influencers have product drops. One side of the internet is chomping at the bit to drop $150 on whatever the product is. They don't even care. The other half of the internet is making fun of those people and saying they're pathetic for spending their money on that. So who's right? And if you have the spare money, is it so wrong to spend it? I think the bigger question is, does it give you the connectedness that you're searching for? Does it make you feel like you're part of something? And if so, let it be. But if it doesn't, maybe there's a different way that your $150 could be spent. For instance, one summer I spent around $100 on a community tennis clinic, and it was just at a rec center, and it was for about 6 weeks. It wasn't just about brushing up on my tennis skills. It was about having guaranteed partners to play with and a little instruction on top of that. Maybe there is something similar that you might spend your money on, like learning about pottery, or maybe a class pack to a Pilates studio, or maybe a course on how to make sourdough. I truly believe at the core of our search for novelty, there is often this desire to belong. And trust me, I get it. Community is everything, and while there are people everywhere, sometimes it's hard to find your people. And that's why I use such specific examples. Trust and believe, no matter how unique your interests are, there is someone out there who shares that and would love to share it with you. Okay, the next one is kind of basic. It's not just about wanting an ube latte or desiring to belong. I think we've all found ourselves in a place where we're like, I work every single day. What am I doing this for? And can't I also give myself some nice things? And that's fair. I think there is such a feeling of abundance when I'm out at a farmer's market or in the middle of running errands and I decide to just make an impulse buy. And I'm able to do it because it's in my budget. It's honestly a really good feeling. But I've also been on the other side of the coin when it wasn't even an impulse buy. It was something that I needed and I had to decide between one thing or another because that's just how tight my budget was. And that feeling led me to feeling like I had a lack of choices. And yes, we can preach to everyone to say that everyone has a choice and, this and that, but we also need to acknowledge that some people don't have the greatest choices to choose between. So out of a desire to have some amount of autonomy, we spend. And while I don't think there's a simple black and white answer to this, I just want us to sit with that for a moment. You can read 1,000,001 manifestation books, learn all about abundance, But the truth is, sometimes the options you have in front of you are not good. So I think in the face of that, it's okay to give ourselves a little bit of grace for however it is we choose to cope when it's, just not a good situation. So that being said, if you happen to find yourself in that position, and it turns out standing in line at Trader Joe's for an hour for one of those little colorful lunch bags brings you a tiny bit of joy, that was not time wasted. That was worth it. And in the times that we buy ourselves something that gives us joy for a little while, and then it no longer brings us joy, maybe we can gift it to someone else and bring them joy. Not everything has to last forever. I also think we seek out novelty because it triggers something in our brain that inspires us. I do not remember the specific time when I first had a matcha latte, but I can tell you, trying something for the very first time or bringing a friend for them to try something that you love is absolutely exhilarating. We should not rob ourselves of opportunities to do that, whatever it might be. But in the times where we may not have the budget, can we expand our thinking? Is there a viewpoint in your city or some other tourist attraction that you've never taken advantage of because you're a local and you've just never looked at the city that way? Is there a small child or younger person in your family that you might be able to show something new and experience the sense of wonder through their eyes? It could be just going outside and blowing bubbles, or a local art exhibit, or a festival. Playing with a puppy. The bottom line is, I believe we all need newness. And it is available every single day if you look for it. Much of the novelty we are seeking, the thing that could actually light up our brain and inspire us for the day, does not always even need our credit card. So I challenge you in the coming days and weeks. I want you to go and enjoy something in your city that you've been putting off for a long time that you just haven't been able to make a priority. It could be just going to that viewpoint to enjoy the sunrise. Think about the planning and coordination that it would take to get there, to experience it, just so you could take a deep breath while the world is still and quiet. Maybe it's checking out your local library to see their video collection. Maybe it's getting a library card because you lost yours years ago. It could be hiking a new trail. It could be finally signing up to volunteer after saying you would for months or even years. Maybe it's texting your friends back and actually arranging to connect like you've been saying you wanted to. My point is, I believe the desire for novelty comes from a very sincere place. Our minds are begging for us to break up the monotony and show us something we haven't seen before or haven't seen in a while. I think we can fulfill some of these desires without buying a bunch of things that we really don't need. It's not frivolous and it's not wasteful to be seeking out excitement in life. I challenge you to make a little list for yourself, and throughout the next few weeks or even months, I want you to check off that list and just take time to reflect on how you felt when you actually went out and did those things. You deserve novelty.